Thank you, Hannah. So there's no other questions on this part. I will move on. So next, I will be demoing the inbox triage agent functionality. Really, our goal here is to try and classify any incoming cases that are generated as a result of email to case in Salesforce. So since you have a potentially publicly facing email address to consume all of that email traffic that eventually get converted to cases within Salesforce. We see a ton of situations where you see cases get generated for spam, phishing emails, advertisements, emails that are malicious in intent. And these get converted, obviously, to cases that someone on your team has to manually analyze and either delete or ignore, and it just clogs up your case pipeline. So really here we want to leverage Agentforce to read the contents of those emails, and not only the contents, but also the attachments associated with those emails and classify them as legitimate spam, phishing, etc., that your team can act on or further automation can act on and automatically delete them and do something else with them so that someone on your team physically doesn't have to do that. So for the demo, I have set up 3 example emails that I'm going to send to our Salesforce org to be converted as cases. So the first one here, this is just standard advertising email you would see from the department store. This obviously isn't relevant to a higher ed organization at all. But we see these all the time in our own inboxes, and they can end up in Salesforce's cases. The second email here is a completely blank email, but we do have an attachment. So totally blank email, body and subject line, but we have attached a resume to this. So this would be a situation where, maybe you've reached out to someone over the phone or one-on-one and asked them to submit a resume, ahead of like some sort of interview. And they go ahead and submit that resume with a completely blank email to the address that handles email to case. And the last email here is kind of just a generic admissions question. It just reads, I have an application question. I'm kind of interested in some programs that you all are offering. Can you help me with that? So let me go ahead and send these over. And so what's going to happen on the back end? Obviously, you're not going to be, kind of manually sending emails and watching them process really in front of the screen. All of this is designed to be working in the background as email to case usually does. So essentially, by the time you reach the actual records in Salesforce, they would have been processed by Agentforce. So like I mentioned, Agentforce is not only going to look at the email body itself, but it's also going to look at the attachments and try and pick something out about them to classify them and say, hey, this is actually from an applicant or a student, or this is advertising, spam, phishing, and so on and so forth. So if we just refresh this list view here, we'll give those a second to come through. But this first one here is a case that was generated from the advertising email. So if we take a look at the feed here, we will see that email come through. It's just a total advertisement, isn't relevant to us at all. So what Agentforce did is it analyzed the contents of the email, and we can take a look at the processing here in the spam detection status tab. And you can see that Agentforce actually classified this as an advertisement because that's what it is. It checked the box marking it as spam. And if you want to get into the nitty gritty of it, you can take a look at all of the reasoning behind why Agentforce classified this email as an advertisement. So again, we're seeing that confidence level here. Some of the reasons why. So it's actually able to pull out that this is an email with respect to outerwear and footwear. The email was sent from a retail domain, and there's no indication that this email has anything related to a higher ed institution. Again, there's that confidence level and the reasons here in a different field. So as this has been marked as spam and it has been classified as an advertisement, you could very easily just create a list view in Salesforce for these cases that are marked as spam or advertisement. And you can go ahead and bulk delete them, or you can report on them however you want. You can even build automation on top of this to potentially do something further with it. But Agentforce is really doing all the heavy lifting in its classification, so you don't have to do that. So if we come back here, let's take a look at this one. So this was that application question. So if we take a look at the feed here, we can see that there's that application question. And if we take a look at the spam detection status, we can see that this actually classified it as a legitimate student applicant, because that's what it is. You have someone asking about some programs or asking about some programs that you all offer. And obviously, we want to be able to respond to that and take action on that. So it left the box unchecked for spam because it's not, classified it as such, and all of the reasoning is available here on the right. And the final one would be this case here. So this was the completely blank email and email body, but we did have an attachment, and that attachment was an actual resume. So if we come over to the spam detection status, even though the email was totally blank, there was still an important attachment associated with it, and Agentforce takes that into its consideration. So because this was a resume, it did classify it as a student applicant, left the spam box unchecked, and you can even see here that it directly references that attachment. Again, you have confidence level and the reasons here as well. So really the idea here is to avoid having a bunch of spam and a bunch of cases in your Salesforce org that aren't directly relevant to you. We want to be able to filter those out if they're not already being filtered out by your email provider.
Thank you, Preston. All right, Preston's going to pass it over to me. There's two more pieces of functionality that is part of our inbox triage agent. So I am going to take it from here. So I am going to show you basically two things. So two problems we're solving. So after email is classified as spam or not, right? It's moved maybe to a spam queue. Maybe we auto close those cases, etc. Um, the next thing that's going to happen is if the email is not spam, we are going to classify and route that email intelligently. So to give you an example of a problem where this comes up, let's say you have a financial aid inbox, you have an admissions inbox that all your admissions representatives or counselors have access to. Maybe you even have a general inbox. There's obviously more departments than just that. We're just going to use those three as an example. Um, and let's say somebody's asking about financial aid, but they email the admissions inbox or the general inbox, right? It doesn't get routed. They don't email the financial aid inbox. So in standard email to case functionality, it's basically set up. So I've got my admissions email, my financial aid email, and my general email, and I set it up so that way Salesforce creates a case for that email every time we receive an email in the inbox. And that allows us to manage those inquiries within Salesforce, respond to them so you can reply back and forth, and also attach them to those applicant, student, or prospective student records within Salesforce and collaborate them internally with team members. So if somebody emails me about financial aid to admissions, standard email to case functionality is going to automatically route it to the admissions queue because it went to that admissions inbox. What we're doing differently here, utilizing Agentforce, is we're having Agentforce review the content of that email, so the inquiry, and then we're having it routed based on the question or the need that is being spoken to in the email. Okay, so that's the first item I'm going to show you, or first problem. The second problem or feature I'm going to show you is auto replying. So let's say you have questions, and especially during high peak times, that you're asked over and over again. So an example could be, how do I give you my official transcript? So you're replying to those inquiries uh, in mass, right? Basically with the same answer or roughly the same answer each time. So we have built it so you can determine the scope, right, of questions that we want to auto reply to if we have sort of a predefined way or process to respond to, while also contextualizing it within the information. So ingesting information about that student. So an example is we're going to have Agentforce, again, look at that question, determine what type of question it is. Does it fit within the scope that we want to auto reply? If we do want to auto reply, we're going to allow, we're going to be able to look at information about that student. So for example, if you're just asking how to submit an official transcript, it's pretty straightforward. We have a process that we can surface to that individual in our reply. But let's say somebody submitted their official transcript or requested it and they want to know, hey, did you receive it? We can use we can basically traverse those records, find their application, find their checklist item automatically, and check if we've received it and auto reply without any human intervention. So that is sort of the second problem. So we define the scope of what those questions are. We're not giving free rein here. You have control, so you can scale up or down based on what you're finding as you interact with your student body over terms and years, what is really the major players, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and show that now. I'm going to give you some examples of emails. I'm going to have them sent and then we'll go through it one by one. Okay, so the first email I'm going to send is a question about financial aid, and there's also a question about the admissions process, so number of recommendation letters required. Okay. Um, the next question is just a simple question. Did you receive my official transcript? We're going to have another one, like my example. How do I provide an official transcript to you? And then we're going to, if we have time, we're going to also look at this one. They're asking about financial aid, and they're also asking about housing. So financial aid here and housing in this part. So questions about roommate matching. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and send those emails. I just realized I have to turn email deliverability on in order to have Agentforce reply. So give me 1 second. Of course, that is the one thing I forgot. So let me resend those emails now that I have turned on email responses. So give me one moment while I resend those. So you noticed while I turn this on and resend these, you might have noticed that in some of my questions, I'm asking multiple things. And that is to demonstrate to you how we're going to handle, obviously, students don't typically just ask a simple one and done. They might, but they might have several questions. And so how we handle that utilizing Agentforce is we set a priority level. So we do something like, okay, if they ask about admissions and financial aid, um, admissions is going to be our priority. So we're going to route that to admissions, and then depending on your business process, right? We can do further automation or manual intervention at that point. So that is how we will handle that. Um, and you'll see that in action in a moment here. So hopefully I've sent all of them now. Okay. And I'll send my last one here. Perfect. Okay. So we're going to see them come in twice because I originally sent them where our entire org was set where we couldn't send out emails. And that's just to control the number of emails we send a day so we can demo this to you. Now, while we're seeing these come in, and I'm going to show you some things about the queue. But first, I want to return to a question that Preston previously demoed, right? So when Preston was demoing the spam filtering, we looked at this application question. So this is a pretty simple question. We already saw the spam
Hey,
detection.
Hannah,
Oh,
we can't see your Salesforce screen.
oh, did I share just one thing? Sorry, everybody. Okay, you can all see this now? Thank you, Hannah.
Yes.
Okay, so we previously looked at this case, and which was a legit marked not as spam, right? Asking about their application. If we go to queue routing, we can see that Agentforce, you might have noticed that all of these emails are going to a standard Tondro University email address, so a general email address that we can see here. So if we look at the queue routing, Agentforce essentially reviewed the content of that inquiry, routed it to the admissions queue because it's an admissions question, and gave a reason why it is routing. So if we go back to cases and we look at our admissions queue, we're going to see that inquiry right here in that queue. Okay. Our second one, let's take a look here. So we have this one was they were asking about financial aid and roommate matching. So in our order of operations, admissions comes first, then financial aid, and then housing. And so that's sort of the priority in terms of routing we've determined. So this one routed it to finance because the finance question takes higher priority. Okay, so if we go again, look at our cases here, and we go to our finance queue, we're going to see that that inquiry is right here in that queue. Okay, so now let's take a look. And our next one. Okay, so this was the question of how do I provide my official transcript? Now, the great thing about utilizing Agentforce to route these is you can even have sub queues. So let's say admissions handles all admissions inquiries and transcript inquiries. But we want to route those transcript inquiries to a separate queue for maybe a subgroup, or maybe we route it to a subgroup of register or a team within a specific team. So we can create sort of sub queues, right, within your department. So you can call out those specific requests and manage those effectively. So there's no longer any manual rerouting of these. Agentforce is doing that for you. Okay, so this one was routed to transcript. It's an admissions questions, or at least in this demo's purposes. And this is the first one that I'm going to show you this auto reply. So how do I provide my official transcript is included in the current scope that we are allowing to auto reply. So we see a summary of it, an evaluation. Agentforce evaluated what kind of question is being asked. We're going to see this prompt here, and I'm going to come back and talk about this in a minute, but I want to show you on the feed what that auto reply looks like. So we can see just a general logo. Obviously, all of this is customized to you. And then we have an auto reply of, hey, thanks for your question. Here's how you will submit it. It tells them where they will send it, tells them that they need to reach out to their prior college of university. It lets them know that we will process it once received for them. And it also gives some helpful notes. Like if you receive an official transcript to you and you open it, this would be considered unofficial. So just giving them some helpful items. Okay. Um, so this information is very similar to how we talked about earlier with Navigator having knowledge base. We can have knowledge base specifically on knowledge articles in Salesforce, or we can tie it to specific objects based on how you want to organize that. That's all customizable. Okay, now I'm going to go to this other transcript question we had. Again, not spam, routed to transcript queue. And this is, again, an official transcript. And basically, with this reply, if we take a look here, one thing I want to note is we have access to this contact here. We already have an applicant existing in our system. We can see on this application here, we have a current application. And if we look at our checklist items, we can see that it is in a rejected status. So we are able to traverse the information about your student to reply and give them an automatic status update. So they have that automatic status update in the portal. And if they email somebody, we're having automation and AI traverse that, check that information, and answer that question for them. Rather than having you have to do answer those questions for those repeated questions, the questions that you would essentially answer in the same way, take the same process each time. And this allows you to focus on those higher touch point inquiries that require a little bit more, I would say, like that human element in terms of a little bit more care, basically. Okay. And then our last question was another one that was essentially asking about financial aid and I believe an admissions here, application question. And because admissions is higher in our priority, it routed it here. So I mentioned earlier this AI response here. So we kind of have two options here. And part of our goal here on this Agentforce team is to really develop solutions that are one, solving real higher ed problems, right, that are useful to you, but two, adopting AI basically in the most effective way possible. So we can use AI to auto reply, as you can see, but what we would typically recommend is using AI to ingest and understand the question. And if you are answering in a very strict way, right, you want to totally control how it answers, it's always going to be check the status and answer that, or it's always going to be this specific process. We would create decision branches and use that through basically more traditional means, non-AI. When you want more robust and less control, we would then shift to AI, right? So Navigator is a really good use case where we want it to be able to pick different topics and basically create a language on the spot. In this use case, if the scope is small and controlled, we're going to use AI to ingest or understand the emails to help determine how to answer automatically. So we will, with any of these products and any customizations, will provide recommendations based on what we understand in terms of specifically Agentforce and Salesforce, but AI in general, and how it is best used as a solution. And that is the full demo of all three.